Greetings, everybody. Coming to you from my 2012 Mercedes-Benz S350 BlueTEC diesel. So I bought this car sight unseen, and I was just thinking about all the different things that I did to make sure that I was going to get a good car and not have any hidden surprises or whatever. And you know, there's just some tips that you can follow that I wanted to share. That has I've bought several cars sight unseen, and so hopefully this helps somebody. So, you know, first of all, you just want to have a conversation with the seller. I mean, and there's little details around that. You want to see how easy are they to reach, how quickly do they call you back, that sort of thing. And then make a request, ask for a video about something, or ask for specific pictures or specific repair records, or all of the above, and just see how responsive and accommodating they are. If somebody is very willing to provide you whatever you're looking for, that's a really good sign that that person's going to be good to work with. Also, if a person is very responsive and they get back to you within a reasonable amount of time, that's also a good sign. It's when you run into somebody that, like, when you ask for a picture of something or a video of something, they just kind of get a little flaky, well, that's probably not somebody you want to deal with, because, you know, that's a sign of a personality thing that might make them more difficult to deal with, especially once you follow through with the deal. You know, that could lead to them just not being willing to help the shipper load the car, or even be available for the shipper when they pick up the car. Or maybe they won't even answer their phone when the shipper says, "Hey, I'm here to pick up the car," you know, assuming of course you have it shipped. So that's one thing. Now, so assuming you get the person on the phone, you know, just have a general conversation, ask random questions, see how friendly they are, see how, you know, willing they are to have a little bit longer of a conversation. That's also a really good sign that, you know, this is going to be a good person to work with. And you know, you're gonna get a feel, you're gonna get an instinct about how that person is to deal with, and you kind of just go with your gut instinct. So another tip is, once you've vetted the person, I think it's super important, especially on a complicated car like a Mercedes S-Class, to understand exactly what you're buying, what the common issues are, whether or not they've been addressed, what kind of documentation there is. You know, in the case of this car, there's several common issues that happen a lot on these, like air suspension. The diesels in particular have like the AdBlue heater. I mean, there's just a number of things. So you want to ideally go through the whole history, see how well the car was maintained, was the correct oil used. That applies to both gasoline and diesel engines. You want to look up the manufacturer's specification and make sure that that's what was used. You know, like in particular in a diesel engine, if you use the wrong spec oil that's not designed for a diesel for an extended period of time, that can actually poison the diesel particulate filter, and also cause some damage inside the engine, because the oil is not designed for handling the special requirements of a diesel engine. You know, so make sure that all that is addressed. And you know, It's also not a bad idea to see if they can pull the codes for you for all the modules, so you can see if there's any pending issues and anything that might be upcoming that might cost a lot of money. And you can usually kind of tell if that's necessary by the shops that worked on the car, and if there were inspections done along the way. You know, and so far all of this, I've never actually had a PPI. I've always just kind of gone by reviewing the history, talking to the person, seeing common issues, and then just putting that all together. Another thing is, look very carefully at the pictures. You're going to want to have a lot of detailed pictures so you can look. I mean, you really have to look closely for things like rust, or misaligned body panels, or even, you know, dents or worn out tires, or just anything like that could be a potential expense. You really got to spend a lot of time looking at that stuff. And another thing is, when you're buying sight unseen, you want to have a good cold start video and a good driving video for that, you know, so you can observe how the car accelerates, how it shifts. It does help to be familiar with a particular model, so you can listen carefully and you know, hear if you hear the shifting correctly, and the acceleration correctly. You know, a lot of times a car can be down on power, and so if somebody's doing a full throttle acceleration and it just doesn't look right, you'll know. You'll have an idea that car is not right. You know, and that again goes back to like the willingness of the seller to provide that kind of information. You know, a good request is a full throttle acceleration video. You know, you don't want to hear any slamming into gear or anything like that. You don't want to see the power down. You want to make sure the car goes up to the red line before it shifts. All that kind of stuff adds up. And, you know, again, listen carefully to the video to see if there's any clunks or squeaks. Also, a walk around video is good. You know, again, it's really take the time to pay attention to the details, because the saying goes, the devil is in the details, and that's really true. You know, so once you do all those things and you take the time, actually probably significantly more time than it would take you to go in person and inspect the car, because you know you're going to have a layer removed between you and the car, and so you need to get all the information that you're going to need from pictures or videos or talking to the person or whatever. And then of course, you know, an obvious one is the Carfax. Make sure there's nothing shady going on the Carfax. That's not always going to have all the information, but you know, it helps. If it's a private seller, you know, buy that yourself. That gets a little more tricky, because a lot of private sellers who are not on an auction site aren't going to be very savvy, you know, so it does help if you're on one of the car auction sites. They tend to have some more layers of useful information built in. I've never attempted to buy a car sight unseen on something like Facebook or Craigslist, but I have done it on eBay, and I learned along the way too. There was one car I bought that it wasn't really bad, but it did have some issues that needed to be addressed. It was a car I did not have a driving video of, and it was another diesel S-Class. This one in particular was a 93 300 SD, and I actually flew down to, I want to say it was South Carolina, to pick up the car and drive it home. And as I was driving it on the highway, whenever I was going through like the mountains, it had zero power going up hills. It would keep losing speed and making a lot of black smoke. So I mean, technically the engine sounded fine, but there was some misadjustment on the turbo. Fortunately, it didn't actually need a turbo. It just needed some adjustments on the existing turbo, you know. So that was kind of a learning experience for me. That may have actually been the first car I ever bought sight unseen. So I've since learned to pay more attention to the details and ask more questions. And it is also better typically to buy from a private party through an auction site than a dealer, because that person will have had the car for longer and know more about its history, and you can tell how they took care of it. You can ask them details about how they maintained it, what did they use, or who did they use, or whatever. Now that doesn't mean that buying from a dealer is always a bad thing. I've done it and I've had good luck. You just have to go there on the reputation of the dealer. So on the auction sites, there are some well-known dealers that very typically accurately represent the cars that they're selling. And so something like that's going to be a pretty decent bet. And you know, so there's a lot of little nuances involved, a lot of details, and you know, it's typically going to be recommended for someone who's willing to go through all these steps and notice everything and prepare if there is something wrong or something missing or something uncertain. Prepare that in the budget, you know, let that affect what you're going to be willing to pay for the car. Maybe you'll get lucky, you know, maybe it will supposedly have an issue, or you expect it to have an issue, and it ends up not having that issue. Then, you know, you're ahead of the game there. So that's my thoughts on the matter. So if you're gonna buy a car sight unseen, hopefully this helps. If you have any specific questions, please feel free to drop them down in the comments, and have a great day.